From the Lena Sue Beam Gallery at Gaston College, I'm Todd Hagans, and our conversation today features Lacey Dellinger. She is the art teacher at Cherryville High School, and this exhibit, Field Notes, Studies in Animal Myth and Meaning. You created all of it. It's all your work.
Yes.
So what inspired this exhibit?
It really began with my own fascination and love of animals, and then I have a young son who's 4 years old, and he has begun developing his own love of animals, and it really started there. And at the time I was also reading a book by the Whitechapel series about contemporary art, and there's an essay in there by John Berger about why we look at animals. And that really stuck with me because it talks a lot of, philosophical of how we view animals and so forth. And that really kind of inspired this of like how animals are perceived through the human lens and how very different that I might view a snake and you may view a snake. That's kind of one of the animals one of the ones I started with in this series was a snake because it does have so many different connotations to so many different people.
So the title is Studies in Animal Myth and Meaning. And so I think you tried to reveal some of those different perspectives about animals. We have our preconceived notions maybe about what animals are and how they act, and you try to dispel some of those myths, correct?
Yes, correct. And so a lot of my work is very much research-based, so I do start off researching about the animal's biology and all of those things, and I read lots of different myths and stories from various cultures. And that's kind of one of the things I like to try to share with people. As you look closer, I hope that you notice a different thing every time. Just like in the crocodile, which is actually an alligator behind me, there's lots of different things that you can notice if you start looking closer, little images from various different cultures and stories from different people, and also your kind of scientific facts and so forth in it as well.
So what are you trying to convey in each piece of artwork?
So I'm trying to convey something about each animal. So I do a lot of research, about each one, and so they do change, and it depends on what I find in my research and what the stories inspire me as I'm doing. So sometimes they're more sporadic, and I guess there's not a concrete image overall, and sometimes they're where there is a very concrete image. Like in one piece, if you look at it a little bit, you'll see there's a fox and a crow, and in that piece there was a very specific thing I wanted to show the viewer, is the story of the fox and the crow that goes back to Aesop's fable, and I wanted you to see that from a distance. As you look closer, you begin to see other things about the fox, but that was just a very multicultural thing I saw about the fox particularly, was that it was considered a cunning animal, a trickster of some sort. And I wanted to convey that in the work, and each piece is very pertinent to the animal itself.
And I think each piece you also can see something different each time, a different aspect, maybe something you didn't notice when you looked at it the very first time that helps tell that story or helps show the audience more of what you wanted them to see.
Thank you. I'm glad you noticed that. That is something that I strive to show in my work.
So why is art important to you? And as an art teacher, why is fine arts education important for your students? Well,
as I've went through teaching and continuing with my master's, fine arts have become part of my identity. It feels like a lot of who I am. It's not only do I enjoy the technical aspects so that I can continue to grow my technical skill, like even at SCAD, while I'm getting my master's degree, I have felt like I've grown technically, and I know more about how to teach my students even on how to properly draw a portrait in a way that's easier for them and so forth. So I think it's just a nice technical thing as well as being a way for me to free myself and express my thoughts and feelings. And I think it's important for my students in the same sense. I think a lot of times that's their place to get away from it all, is my classroom, and the fine arts gives them a place that they can be themselves. And often without as much pressure as other places, because it's maybe in a sketchbook or it's somewhere. I laugh like during the interview, I like to hide behind my art, and I think that's an artist thing, is that it gives you a place to like put yourself without feeling as much pressure.
So what do your students think about when they see your artwork? What do they think about it?
Overall, overall, they seem to like it. I think that they enjoy seeing something different than they're used to. I think especially with my collage work, they're not as familiar with that. I mean, we look at it some in class, but they're just more familiar with your traditional style painting and so forth. And so when they see me using all these different materials, it tends to, I think, inspire them to be a little bit more risky. And not, because a lot of students, especially if they're good at art, they will want to stay with the one thing. Like, oh, I'm great at portraits, so I want to draw portraits all the time because when I draw an animal, it doesn't look great. So I think them seeing me doing lots of different things in like a canvas kind of frees them to try new stuff too.
So let's say there is a student who is interested in art, but maybe a little reluctant to jump into it. What do you say to that student?
Well, one thing I tell them to do is to get out there and look at the job market, because if you get on Indeed right now and you search up art jobs, just like the word art, and you look within 50 miles, you will be surprised at how many positions come up that they never think about. Most people think of, oh, it's either a teacher or you're a starving artist, and that's that old trope that, oh, you'll never make money at either. And that's really not true. Like, there are so many fields who want creative minds. Now, will you always be doing your own art? No. I mean, that's just not going to happen. If you work in an animation studio, you're going to draw the same thing over and over again, or you're going to work on that. You might color that same character, and that be your job for that entire, animation. But you can still work within your field. If you love to create, there are tons of jobs out there. So I really encourage students just to do a job search to start off with, and then to really think about what they want to do, and to think about going to school and studying more that way, and giving it a chance and not thinking they can't do something because it's so out of reach.
What does it mean to you to know that you may have an influence, or you may inspire your students to choose art as a profession?
It means a lot. I mean, it's a really great feeling. Like, I have a few students who are here at Gaston College and are planning on pursuing a career in the arts. I have a few students now who are thinking about it. I have a former student who was, now you're going to be an art teacher. And that always makes you feel great that someone wants to kind of follow in your footsteps. And I just really hope that I inspire them to do something that makes them hopefully a better person or feel better about themselves, because I think that's a big part of art too. Even if you don't do it for a career, it might be something that when you've had a bad day, you can come home and you can paint and get away from it all.
Your artwork is very impressive, so let's take a look at some of it. So let's talk about this piece here.
So this is titled Earth Lady, and this is based on an Aztec myth about the Earth Mother and kind of a creation myth. And so one of the reasons, if you notice, if you look closer, is almost like a tear here, and it's showing you the canvas underneath. And the reason is because in that story, two other gods, in order to create the earth, ripped the toad mother apart, but then she still must stay alive for the earth to stay alive. And that's kind of one of the reasons that the Aztecs had the blood sacrifices that they did, was to please the earth mother. And so that's why there's this tear. And it's also showing you lots of different things, like there's a little bit of the Aztec imagery here, as well as if you've heard anything about the cane toads in Australia, that is a big problem they're having with invasive toad species. So I wanted this toad to be kind of menacing and a little bit creepy, I guess you would say.
So now we will take a look at this piece. Tell us a little bit about it.
So this is called This Is Not a Gentle Giant, and this is one of my most recent pieces. I have another few that are about dinosaurs. And I hope this to be what I'm doing my thesis about. But one thing particularly about the Triceratops that I wanted to kind of show to the viewer was this very majestic horned beast. And this idea that we often think of, elephants and animals that are large now as gentle giants. And this definitely would have not been a gentle giant. It would have been quite a formidable foe, and there's actually some fossil evidence that shows T-Rex being the Triceratops fighting back against T-Rex even. So I hope, and then one thing that was really interesting is a cowboy actually found so if you see here, there's something about cowboys here, and it's about during this heyday of paleontology when they first discovered Triceratops. The first Triceratops horn was found with a lasso. So the cowboy was out, he's running through out in Montana, if I'm not mistaken, and he sees like a horn sticking out of there, and he uses his lasso to pull it down. So I just thought that was was a really interesting story and wanted to really make sure the horns and that cowboy was being able to see.
So you can see in this piece, the wolf is the focus. Tell us what you are trying to convey with this artwork.
So with this piece, I was definitely trying to show the many different faces of the wolf. And this one, as I mentioned earlier, some pieces end up a little bit more fragmented, and I feel like that's because we have a more fragmented relationship with the animal. And wolves do seem that way. They're just like with the reintroduction of wolves in Yosemite, there was such a people loving it, people hating it. And that's something I really wanted to show with all the different facets of wolves. These kind of represent some wolves from Native American stories and how the wolf helped the Native Americans find food and so forth, and they became part of the Milky Way galaxy. So just stories like that are incorporated, as well as this classic wolf howling at the moon and this kind of werewolf lichen type of story that we see in many cultures.
So where people may be a little standoffish when it comes to a wolf, they embrace the bear a little bit more. Talk about the message behind this piece.
So very much in our research and things that we see in various stories from cultures and things like that, the bear is often brother bear or mother bear or sister bear or somehow humanized. Often people turn into bears in lots of Native American stories and Russian stories. They turn into bears. And so this is our mother bear with cubs, this classic story of Snow White and Rose Red, and others, and the woman kind of embracing the bear as well. And we think about bears in circuses and them boxing and playing, and that kind of play between this fierce animal that it can be and this kind of connotation that most of us think of that. And that's also why I have the claw mark, is this kind of showing that possibility of danger with the bear, but this overwhelming kind of cuddliness about the bear as well.
So you mentioned the story about the fox and the crow, and this is the piece of artwork that goes with it.
Yes. So this is largely, the imagery on top is largely based on Aesop's fables and the story of sour grapes, and the fox sees grapes. He tries everything to get to it, but he's unable, and so he says those are probably sour anyways. And then also playing on the idea of the fox being a trickster, and that he flatters the crow in another of Aesop's fables into dropping his meal. So the question is the fox clever enough to get the grapes from the crow? And then I had the foxglove in here because I did find that was really interesting. The reason it's called foxglove is because a lot of foxes used to live near where there'd be thickets of foxglove in forests and so forth. So I thought that was an interesting reason of how it got its name.
Now, you told me that this might be your favorite piece. Why is that?
A lot of it has to do with, and this one's called This Is Not a Dinosaur, because this is about plesiosaur and it's a marine reptile. But one of the things that really spoke to me was that the mothering aspect of this animal. They found a fossil recently where it had a full-term baby in the fossil in the mother's stomach, and they think that they probably lived a lot like whales and were very motherly. And just as a mother myself, it just really spoke to me, and that's why I really wanted to have this relationship between the two, of that kind of this sweet moment, because I do feel like this plesiosaur has been seen a lot. In the very background, there's kind of a map of monsters, and there's the actual land formation of the way the land looked at the time the plesiosaur was most active, and so I kind of wanted to have that idea of a monster at the same time that you have this very gentle creature with its young, because it Nessie, and a lot of people thought, oh, Nessie could be a plesiosaur that is still there, and things like that. So I kind of wanted to play against that idea of it being a monster of any kind and just show that kind of gentle relationship between mother and child.
So you immediately notice here what is an opposite color palette. Talk about this piece.
So this one is called American Coyote, and so I really wanted to play with the colors of red, white, and blue, with red being predominantly the color that you see, or red-brown, because we do think of coyotes being that color and then them coming from the southwest. But now they've taken over the whole country, and that's what this is showing here. Now, this is one of the first pieces I began, and it does not have the collage work that the other ones did, because this was, I guess, in the developmental stage, you would say. But one thing that I really wanted to show with this piece, coyotes have been villainized very much in American culture, but they're survivors. They survive, and much like, I think, like the American people, like we're survivors. And so that kind of connotation I wanted to put with that. Like, I feel like the coyote is really an American animal. And that's something that I wanted to show with this piece.
So with this piece of art, this guy right here grabs my attention. Talk about this dinosaur-inspired piece.
So this piece is it's called This Is Not a Monster, and it is primarily about T-Rex. And the Tyrannosaur family of dinosaurs. And so I have this little guy here, which is supposed to be like a youngster, and he is very realistically kind of peeking out of the trees at you to kind of play with that idea that we don't think about T-Rex as a baby, but he was a baby at one time, and they're animals just like any other animal. But a lot of us think of this toothy monster. And originally, like, I had not planned on the toothy part of the skeleton to be as prominent, but like that just kept kind of coming up to my own head of when I watched the first Jurassic Park movie, and this fear of this beast that could come after you if you know, in that situation. So like that was something I wanted to convey, was the softer side of T-Rex, but the fact that overwhelmingly we think about these teeth. And those teeth are like one of the big things that I think kind of gives us the wonder about dinosaurs. And that's kind of, as I'm heading toward my work right now, that's something I'm really focused on, is the wonder we have with animals, and particularly like animals from prehistoric times like T-Rex with their giant teeth and giant skull.
So what did your research reveal about the raccoon?
So interestingly enough about raccoons, there are more raccoons in urban areas than in rural areas, which I thought was super interesting, is because they've really adapted to live with us well. And that's kind of how my research really first started, was about commensal animals that are able to live alongside us and like thrive. And the raccoon is one of those. There's like nicknamed, you know, funnily trash bandits or trash pandas and things like that. And they really have learned how to live with human beings in urban areas very well. They're really smart animals. And I think that's interesting, that the animals that live alongside us well are often like us, that they're adaptable, they eat a lot of different foods, things like that. And that was one thing with the raccoon, I think, that really was prevalent to me. And this one doesn't also have the collage, because it was one of my earlier pieces, and I kind of developed the collage later. But it does have lots of different imagery, from the raccoon walking on the street to like one holding his food here. And if you look closer, there's more kind of raccoons hidden here and there.
So now we are to the piece that has gained a lot of attention recently. This is the piece that was chosen for the Cape Fear Studios 2D National Art Competition. So tell us about this piece of work.
So this is titled What a Croc, and the reason is it doesn't have a double meaning. It means like, wow, what a croc, but also like what a croc of that this is not true, because this is actually an alligator. So that is one thing with this animal I found kind of interesting, is that it's really difficult for most people to be able to tell the difference between the two. And although the alligators are part of the same crocodilian family as crocodiles, they are two different species. So that was one thing I was kind of playing with this piece. And something that I really enjoyed about this one was using the collage to make the water. And I thought the collage was really effective as like a technical way to create that water look. And some of it actually began kind of accidental, funnily enough, was that as I was cutting out the collage material, the open jaws of the alligators and the crocodiles made me think of the water. And so the animal kind of, you know, told me what to do, so to speak, is what it felt like with this piece.
Your artwork is so impressive, but I think it's also so impressive the amount of thought and research that has gone into every single piece. It really is amazing to see. And Lacey Dellinger is the art teacher at Cherryville High School, and we appreciate you so much being with us here on Our Conversation.